Now let's add camera to our scene. The easy part is adding the camera itself. Now the tricky part is figuring out the real world details to make the camera feel cinematic. Things like sensor size, aspect ratio, focal length, crop size, camera angles, framing, and camera movement. Here is a pro tip to gather all that information quickly. We can gather information on sensor size and resolution setting from a document called VFX Camera Database. The link is in the description. This document has information on many real world cameras. Find the camera you want to mimic, go in there, and there will be information on its sensor width, height, and also resolution settings. Next, let's talk about aspect ratios. There are three common ones. 16:9 is used for standard widescreen, and vertical and square formats are used for social media. But these days, cinematic widescreen are very popular. We can use 2.33 for widescreen or 2.39 for anamorphic look. We need to add this value in our crop size section. For details like shot size, lens selection, framing, and camera movement, we'll use a resource from StudioBinder channel. They have detailed videos on all these topics. I'll give you a quick overview of all these concepts. Let's start with shot size. There are 9 different types of shot sizes, ranging from an establishing shot to an extreme close-up, and each has its own purpose. For example, an establishing shot or a wide angle shot is great for the beginning of your video to help the viewer understand the environment. Full shots or medium shots work well for dialogue delivery, while the close-ups are perfect for highlighting a specific object or emotion. Next is lens selection. The lens you choose depends on the shot size. For an establishing or wide shot, you will want a wide angle lens with a low focal length. For close-ups, a macro lens with a high focal length works best to capture fine details. After this, you can work on camera angle to frame your scene. A commonly used concept for framing is the rule of thirds. According to this, your main subject should be placed at one of the 4 intersection points on the grid. After fixing the camera angle, you can move on to the camera movements. There are 15 different types of camera movements. For example, a push-in shot draws attention to a specific detail or emphasizes a moment, while a pull-out shot creates a sense of detachment, disconnecting the audience from the character or scene, best for last or ending shots. A trucking or dolly shot moves the camera left or right to follow a character or to shift focus from one thing to another, while an arc shot orbits around the subject, keeping the focus centralized on the subject. Now let's apply all this information and concepts into our scene. For our first camera, I want to replicate a Red Dragon camera. So let's go in here, open this sheet, and let's replicate this 4K format with 2:1 aspect ratio. So note down this value, select our camera, and in the source width and height, apply that value. So you see now our camera sensor size is converted into Red Dragon. As we learn, for the first shot, we want to do an establishing or wide angle shot with a wide focal length, maybe something like this. And let's go into this perspective and cinematic viewport. Let's select this grid so that we have this rule of third grid in here. So for now, let's adjust the camera angle to something like this. Now let's change the focus distance as well. So click on this and select this, and let's click on here. So we have our focus plane focusing on this part of the image. Just like this, I will replicate all the other camera angles and show you how I set it up. Okay, I have added all the camera angles in here. Let's go into them one by one. For demonstration purposes, I have used different type of cameras with different sensor size so that we can explore all the cameras. For the second camera, I used IMAX 70mm. Here, I select this. Then change the squeeze factor. By default, it would be 1, like this. So you see you have bokeh, circular bokeh effect in here. But we need an anamorphic view for this. So change this to 2 for this type of oval shape bokeh, right? And in this blade count, change from 7 to 12. The reason being, with a lower value, you will have this type of cutted bokeh effect, right? So for smooth bokeh shape, change this to 12 or maybe 16. So you will have smooth bokeh effect. 12 is Good enough. After this, change the focal length. For different aspect ratios, you need to change focal length for different type of aspect ratios. So for this, the nice sweet spot was 110. And another thing is the current aperture. By default it is 2.8, and you can decrease this to 1.2. The more lower the value, the more bokeh and background blur it will create. I would set it to something like 4, so we have nice balance between our blurred background image and the foreground. In the focus plane, click on this, and I have set the focus plane to this part. Jump to second camera. For this second camera, I have mimic Arri Alexa Mini. So I have copied this value and paste them in here, right? Then I change the blade count, also change the focus distance. For this I want to use a medium shot, so I kept the focal length around 14, and for this the aperture is set to 1.2. Let's move on to the our last camera angle, which is portrait format. This format is used for our social media contents. So for this I selected this 16:9 DSLR and flip this values. So I put this in here, and the width I switch the value. And in the current squeeze factor, when you change it, by default it will create this type of vertical format, but I wanted the squared format, so I changed this to 2, and it gives this type of nice squarish format. I changed the blade count, also the focus distance. So I and because we changed this squeeze factor from 1 to 2, it gives circular bokeh effect to this type of oval. This will be our medium close-up shot, so change the focal length to 40, right? And we can change the aperture as well. If we set to the lowest value, it gives too much background blur. Always try to find a sweet spot. We don't want to exaggerate. Lastly, we have crop setting. This setting is useful to fix aspect ratio of all the cameras. For example, if we select our second number cameras and go in here, and we can select 2.39 for our anamorphic widescreen aspect ratio. If we select this, it will change from its current aspect ratio, maybe it's to 1.25 or anything, to our anamorphic widescreen aspect ratio. You can add a customized aspect ratio value in here as well. So for example, we see that there is a 2.35 aspect ratio for widescreen, or any desired value. Let's now jump into camera movement. For that, I have prepared some camera animation based on our previous conversation. So let's jump to our first shot. I have done the arc movement like this. So earlier the focus is in here, then it shift to this signage. For second camera movement, we have the trucking or dolly movement from left to right, with focus shift from this to our background element. To do the focus shift animation, you need to keyframe your focus plane. So earlier it is at here, and when it reaches to this point, it's still in here, but then it will animate from this place to the background place. Same way for the third camera angle, we have a push in shot like this. And for the last one, we have the pull out shot with focus shift from here to our donut. Let me turn on the focus plane so it stays on the background till here. Then it start to animate to the foreground element. Lastly, we need to add camera shake to our cameras. If we look at our animation, right now it is too smooth and too perfect. But in real life, the camera is handled by human or a machinery. So there are somewhat of camera shake imperfection. So we'll replicate that in our camera as well. Right click on your content browser, select blueprint class, expand this and search for camera shake. Select camera shake base, name it, open it up and close it, then open again. We have this option, select Perlin noise. We can add camera shake in location, rotation and FOV. We only want location and rotation. Expand timing and change the duration to 0 so that we don't have time constraint. Let's examine our coordinate system. If we select our camera, then we have X, Y, and Z. If this camera is held by human, then there are more movement in the Z axis. It could go more up and down, or left to right, but there are very less chances that it would go back and forth in the x axis. So based on this, I have created a preset. So we have amplitude and frequency. Amplitude represents the strength of this camera shake, while frequency represents how many times it repeats. So I have kept frequency to 1, and in the strength, Z value is higher, then there is a y value, and then the x value is very less. And this one is the overall amplitude and frequency combining all these three axes. So I have put 0.1 in the overall impact. Then in the rotation, same concept. If we expand our transform value, and in the rotation, let's go into rotation. X-axis is roll, y-axis is our pitch, and z-axis is our yaw. So it could move more to left and right, then it could move more to up and down, and less to z-axis. So based on that, I have put higher value in the roll, then in the pitch for up and down movement, and the lowest value in our yaw. And same concept, over we have overall amplitude value. Once these values are put, then you can go into your sequence, go into your camera, click on this add button, go to camera shake, and select your BP camera shake blueprint, and you can expand this like this. So now if we go into our camera angle and see the effect, you see at the end we have very subtle camera shake movement. Let me exaggerate this effect a little bit to show you the difference. You see, now it is moving too much, but we have to be careful. The key here is subtleness. We want very low camera shake. If you like this video, then I'm sure you will like this series. In this 3-part tutorial series, we'll take this cafe scene and transform it into a stunning cinematic masterpiece together in Unreal Engine. I'll guide you through every step, sharing pro tips along the way, and to save your time, I'll timestamp the sections and pro tips down below.